part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
The 1-1 pitch. Swinging a drive to deep right. Away back. Goal!
And with that hammy call, it is time for another episode of Guardians of the Land MLB podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I am Mike Voorhees, and alongside me, as always, the best reliever in the business, Bryan Shaw.
So I don't have my voice this week.
No, Barry White's missing.
But back to normal. And speaking of the pitcher, Bryan Shaw, I got a baseball from him the other day.
Oh, my goodness.
I was wearing my Shaw jersey. They had just wrapped up on their comeback win in extra innings against the Padres. I was sitting kind of close to the bullpen. They were walking out onto the field. I yelled towards him, pointed at my jersey, and he threw me up a ball.
Now you've got to get him to sign it. Now we need to get him on the show.
Coming on the show, that might be a tough ask. I think he likes to stay kind of to himself a little bit.
All right, fine. Then we'll get somebody else on the show. That's not a big deal.
But I do have multiple Bryan Shaw balls.
Well, that's awesome, man. That's very cool.
Yeah. The other time was actually long ago, when the bullpen was in the old spot. You know how it used to be kind of vertical.
Right.
And so that was the other time. I've chit-chatted with him over the years. I actually have a signed jersey from him. I don't know if I've ever told you this story.
I don't think so.
So back when I was in broadcasting, I was working in Buffalo, and Bryan was still with the Diamondbacks.
Okay.
And I was getting these like Roto World style like auto tweets tagging me in his like daily stats of like pitching when he was in the minor leagues with Arizona.
Okay.
And so as a joke, I had some headshots back then when TV stations still gave out headshots. I signed one and said, go Indians, and sent it to the clubhouse. And I never knew if he got it or not. Apparently he did. He gets traded to the Indians. And actually I was tweeting with John Sable, our buddy John Sable, who's on the Sable Brothers. And we were talking about, this was the 2013 season, and it might've been his first season. We're just talking about the team and stuff. And somebody had mentioned like, oh, whose jersey are you going to get this year? And I said, well, obviously I have to get a Bryan Shaw one. And I tagged him in the tweet. When I tagged him in the tweet, I asked him if he had ever gotten my headshot, and he actually replied and he said, yes. And then he said he had something for me, and he had mailed me a Diamondbacks jersey with an autograph on it.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Super nice guy. It gets way too much grief from people, but I won't go into that. Let's talk about this team. So when we had left off 2 weeks ago, we were riding high. They were in first place. They had just swept the White Sox.
Yeah.
And they were in first place.
Yep.
And then starting that night, we hit publish, and they lost for a week straight.
Yeah, we get swept by the Yankees. We got swept by the Angels. I know you and I exchanged some texts in between those games, and man, oh man, was that tough.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough watching.
We knew this team was going to be 500 at best, and they're going to have difficulty playing really good teams. The Yankees are very good. They have the best record in baseball. Their team is very good. Of course, they have a $300 million payroll, but they have very good talent on their team. The Angels, everybody better watch out for them. Shohei Ohtani is the real deal. Mike Trout's healthy. That team is playing unbelievable baseball.
Yeah, they lost two really good teams. You hope that you don't get swept. You hope that you don't go on a losing streak like that. And I think it was very promising to then see them rebound, to sweep Oakland, and then split against the Padres, and then win against Toronto. So now we no longer have to hear about how they haven't beat anybody with a winning record, which correct me if I'm wrong, but at the time, didn't the White Sox have a winning record?
When we played them and swept them, yes.
Yeah. So I thought that was a silly stat that was running around.
Well,
that like
White Sox are falling off, and
they are, but they're also injured, which I think. So to lead into that, let's also talk about that 7-game sweep. You lost a couple of guys to COVID there for a little bit. The very hot hitting Owen Miller, our Obi-Wan Kenobi, who had a little bit of a hamstring injury and missed what I think almost all those games.
I believe he missed both series.
So there were some things that I think led to that. Also, those teams being very good, but they've rebounded. They've won 5 of their last 6. And what is nice to see is it looks like the bats have still kind of stuck around.
Yeah,
we thought
we'll get to that.
We thought that there was going to be some regression to the mean. There is.
Yeah.
They're not the number 1 hitting team in baseball any longer, which you weren't expecting them to be.
No.
But they're still putting up runs. For example, in the last 6 games, in their 6 wins, they've scored 9, 3, 7, 6, and 6. So
I'll take that.
That's a solid offensive output. But then in those losses, there was a 1-run game, a 2-run game, a shutout, a 1-run game, and another 1-run game. So they're hot, they're cold. Would you say to sweep or not to sweep?
Yep. To sweep or not to sweep, that is the question. No more, though. That's over. We split with the Padres. That kind of ended it.
Yeah.
So I was enjoying the sweeping part, not getting swept part.
That's a wild statistic. I was waiting for MLB random stats to have something out, because it was basically like 7 straight series where there was a sweep one way or another.
Well, I'll tell you what, I want to backtrack though just a bit, because I missed something in my notes. We got to talk about Trashgate in the Bronx.
Oh, yes.
I think that they may have lost that game. And for those that don't know what I'm talking about, so the second game, that Saturday game, in New York, in the Bronx, the Yankees rallied, had a walk-off, but nobody remembers that. What they remember, there were fans in the outfield that were throwing trash and bottles and different paraphernalia things at Cleveland outfielder Oscar Mercado and
Miles Straw.
Miles Straw pulled the Spider-Man, leapt on the wall, had some choice words for the fans because he wasn't going to let his teammate take that abuse.
It started with the game tying run.
Mm-hmm.
The ball goes over Kwan's head. He reaches out for it, pulls it in, and kisses the wall. Yep. He composes himself enough to grab it, throw it in, keep the Yankees from winning the game. But then he's on the ground for a while, and his face is a little beat up. He's got some scratches and stuff. Well, Yankees fans were taunting him from the outfield. So that is what Straw took exception to and started chattering at them, and then hops the fence and starts yelling back. So then it's either the next at bat or a couple of at bats later. But then when the Yankees do win the game, Yankees fans from a different part of the outfield from where Straw climbed the fence starts throwing garbage onto him, because it was the left field where Kwan was, where he climbed the fence and was yelling at the fans. And then it was the right field fans that were throwing garbage at him. Interestingly enough, I have heard nothing about that from MLB. And Are those fans banned? Are they?
I haven't heard anything, but
anything along those lines. Were there any arrests? Anything like that? I
know that Aaron Boone talked about it in his post-game press conference, and I know he was very disgusted, with him being a former player, the fact that he actually defended the Guardians in that regard. And I will say that I really enjoyed watching the 6'7" Aaron Judge, who is a very imposing figure, running out to the outfield to help the Guardians, because he couldn't believe what was happening either. But I honestly think that was a turning point in this season, Bryan. This team showed solidarity right there. Miles Straw became my favorite player at that moment.
That was an incredible
he stepped
moment.
up for his team. he wasn't going to allow stuff like that to happen. So my hat's off to Miles Straw. I would love to have him come on this show so that we can talk to him, because I want to know what was going through his head. I want to know how angry he really was, because he was visibly upset.
I'd have to really go digging because it was a while back, but I had tweeted when the video that came out of him climbing the fence, I was like, I'll be right back. I'm going to buy my Miles Straw jersey right now. And that got like, here, wait.
It was on Saturday, April.
That got about
23rd.
1,000 likes.
Wow.
And
I don't think I've ever had a tweet receive that many likes. So that's pretty awesome.
And the team put out a tweet that just said team, and it was all the players walking together.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. I think that was a nice bonding moment for them. I would have loved if they were able to come back and then win that next game and not get slaughtered 10-2.
Yeah.
And then, you had wondered then after that loss and then getting swept by Anaheim or LA of Anaheim, was it going to go the other direction? Was it a turning point of, there was solidarity, but there was just, something about that moment, and they just weren't running on all cylinders. But that doesn't look like this is the case. They've rebounded now. And I think that's a huge, huge team bonding moment.
Yeah. I mean, this team looked really good against the A's. They looked good against the Padres in both of those games, even though they lost one. And then last night's game against Toronto, they looked really good.
Yep.
For those that care, tonight's game has been postponed and will be made up as a traditional doubleheader on Saturday. So there you go. So tonight, no baseball, but that's okay. We still have you covered, and we're going to talk about baseball.
So we also have other news too. There was a couple of transactions.
The team had to make some roster moves
since the last time we recorded. We got past May 1st, and they actually made. I was surprised. I was kind of hoping for one because I thought it needed to be done. I was surprised by the other. Knowing the team, I was kind of actually surprised they made either, and they didn't just option a player that had options, but they ended up designating for assignment Bobby Bradley and Logan Allen. Logan Allen got picked up by Baltimore, and Bobby Bradley is back with the team in AAA. He cleared waivers.
So you heard me clapping there. We had been asking and wondering when Bobby Bradley was going to go down. He had like 2 hits in 18 at bats. He looked lost. He needed to go back to AAA and play every day, and
that it was his time to no longer be taking up a roster spot. The Logan
Allen one, though, Bryan, I'll tell you, did not surprise me. It did not surprise me. And here's why. Logan Allen has had multiple chances to pitch, and he's been up and down all over the place. They've got some other lefties in the bullpen, one of which we will touch on here in a minute. The other one being Anthony Gose. And I think Logan just became expendable. And I'm happy that he got picked up by another team. The Orioles are desperate for pitching. I wish him nothing but the best of luck. I would love when the Orioles play the Orioles play the Guardians. I would love to see Logan Allen pitch against the Guardians. I really would, just to see if maybe a change of scenery is what he needed.
Yeah, I'm just surprised because he was our 5th pitcher starting last season and going into the season, because he had an incredible spring, and then the wheels came off on most of the season. And then he starts this season and he's still kind of struggling. And you were hoping that in a non-starting role, in a bullpen role, that he would have been able to have it come together like some of the guys that we're going to talk about here coming up, but it didn't happen.
Hold on. Here's Logan Allen's stats real quick, Bryan. He pitched in 4 games, 6 innings. He was 1-0 with a 4.5 earned run average, 6 strikeouts, and a 2 whip.
Yeah, that's not great. It's not great, Bob.
No, it's not. And like I said, I wish him the best of luck in Baltimore.
Yeah, and it's very possible that there's more of these kinds of moves as pieces and parts move around this season. Losing Gabriel Arias for 2 months to a broken hand,
that's tough.
I think shook some things up a little bit. There may have been another move that they were going to have to make because the expectation was he was going to get called up, and then basically the day he was going to get called up, he breaks his hand.
Yep.
So that makes things interesting.
But
they've
that
also
opened the door for yet another youngster to make his major league debut with the Guardians, somebody that I am extremely high on, and that's Richie Palacios. And he's hitting, Bryan. He's hitting
great.
304. He has a couple of RBIs, which, if I remember correctly, those 2 RBIs were game-winning RBIs against the Oakland A's in Oakland when we swept Oakland in Oakland for the first time in 22 years.
And one of them was a pinch hit scenario.
And I think that's the one where he had it was a pinch hit single with 2 RBIs.
Yep.
Another youngster to look forward to. Yes, he's a second baseman by trade. But the Guardians have been playing him in the outfield. And I tell you what,
he's been just fine.
I like what I see.
He's been just fine. If you weren't following him, if you didn't know that he was one of the plethora of infielders, I don't think you would know that he was inexperienced in the outfield or had been made that move, as opposed to with like Ahmed Rosario, which he has had some struggles. And with Palacios there now, I think officially we will no longer see Ahmed Rosario in the outfield.
I think so.
But you have a pretty solid 5-man outfield. That's with George Valera waiting in the wings to be the next guy called up.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but George Valera is still in Double-A Akron, correct?
He is. Yeah, he's probably a late season addition or a next year addition.
Will Benson's another one. I know he's in the outfield. He's in Columbus. Oscar Gonzalez is another one that could come up. But we're gonna have to make roster moves, I think. But I don't want to talk about that yet. But what I want to do, Bryan, we're gonna take a break. But when we come back, I want to talk about the unsung hero of the Guardians bullpen, and you will not believe who it is.
I didn't believe who it was, so you will all be shocked.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back right after this.
The R&R podcast going to be rocking and rolling with you because football season is underway. College, Ohio State, the Power Fives, the MAC, the Browns. Michael Regai, are you ready to rock and roll with some football?
Kenny, I've been ready. This is our time of year. This is what R&R is all about. We're going to be with you every week. Kenny just said it. Browns, NFL, Ohio State centric. So you got to stay with us all fall and winter long here on R&R.
That's right. The Regai and Rhoda podcast coming to you here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe now and don't miss a show.
For the Dennis Maniloff Show, I'll tap into my 40-plus years of following Cleveland sports and 30-plus years of writing and talking about them, so as to bring you informed opinions and analysis of your favorite players and teams. I also will monitor the national sports scene and, when warranted, step out of the toy department and into the real world. And I'll always be on the lookout for special guests. By all means, join us.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sable.
And I'm Scott Sable, and we're hosts of the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
All right, Bryan, we're back from our commercial break. I want to talk about the unsung hero of the Guardians bullpen, and that is Sam Hinches. Yes, you heard me correctly. Lefty Sam Hinches. 11 innings pitched, 15 Ks, and a .82 earned run average. He's been lights out.
When you had showed me that stat, I didn't believe it. I knew he had been pitching well. And there's a few other guys that are pitching pretty well. Like I like that Nick Sandlin has kind of taken a high pressure role in the bullpen, especially because overall the pitching hasn't been great. They are ranked
mediocre
21st.
at best.
They're ranked 21st in ERA as a pitching staff.
Yeah.
So and I also kind of on the other side of this, the Guardians have 8 guys that are hitting over 270. So them being about 500 right now, it's not the hitting that is the reason that a lot of people expected. It's that they've given up some big run games when it comes to the pitching. Aaron Savali has a 9.45 ERA. Now he pitched pretty decent the other night, but he's struggled a little bit, and there's been a lot of talk about because he was a representative for the players union, and so he didn't get ramped up as fast as some of the other guys, and that's why he was number 4 in the rotation initially. So maybe that still has something to do with it. He's just not up to speed as much as the rest of the rotation is.
I think he's having trouble hitting his spots. You can show he's left a lot of pitches up and out over the plate where guys have been able to turn on it. Hopefully he gets it figured out, because he was the number 2 in our rotation, and I'd really love to see him get it figured out. Shane Bieber still looks good. I said the pitching has been mediocre at best. I did say before we started that they had been good until you pointed out some very specific stats. So I changed good to mediocre, because there have been some guys that have looked good.
Well, their ERA is high, but what you can infer by these other 2 stats is they're ranked 14th in batting average against at 229, and they're 11th in WHIP at 1.18. So the guys are hitting in the clutch situations against them is basically what's happening. Is if they're getting guys on, then teams are stringing together hits against them. And hopefully, that gets corrected as well. Defense hasn't been ideal either. There's been a lot of defensive mistakes.
You're going to have that with young players too. They just have to get comfortable, and they're 17th in errors with 12 as a team, which is a lot. Yeah. We're early on. So
you expect a Terry Francona team to be a little bit tighter when it comes to defense. I think we're used to good defense when it comes to Cleveland baseball. So to see them kind of throw away and just hand over runs sometimes is extremely frustrating, when you know that they have to play tight to win some of these ball games. There's been a lot of 1-run games. But again, like I said last time, there's a lot of promise with this team, and they've come around after that losing streak and to win 5 of 6, and hopefully it continues against good teams with Toronto, and then they have the White Sox again, and then they have Minnesota again. So this is a really crucial stretch of games for them.
Well, Stephen Kwan has been really good. We've talked about him a few times this year, hitting 328. He's been amazing. He's only struck out 7 times. And then you have the opposite on the spectrum with Franmil Reyes hitting a buck 84, 2 home runs, 8 RBIs, 40 strikeouts.
Yeah, that's tough.
And only 3 walks. He's got to get that under control.
I had said that his plate approach was really bad, and he had that stretch where he recorded, I think, like 20 straight outs or something like that. There's been a couple of moments where I was like, this is what's going to get him out of it. This is what's going to get him out of it. And it still hasn't happened, but it may have happened last night.
Yes.
He had 3 singles last night.
Yes, he did.
He was 3 for 3. He's had some clutch hits where he's getting runs in to kind of shake out of that.
It's sad though. He still struck out once.
Well, if he gets his strikeouts down to 1 a game, I think we'll be thrilled.
I think I'd like to see the walks go up a little bit for Franmil, and I know that Tito has dropped him down in the order, trying to get his confidence back. Yeah. And plus, you've got guys that are hitting extremely well with Josh Naylor and Owen Miller. So you just got to ride the hot hand.
Yeah, and Naylor's surgence has really surprised me. not that I didn't think that he would be good at some point, and I know he was playing well in AAA. It's just with that kind of injury, you would expect that there to be some dust that these guys are going to have to shake off. And that was not the case for him. He's been hitting great.
We haven't even talked about Andres Jimenez, who's done really well. Naylor, we just touched on. Jose, who's the man, still leading the league in RBIs with 29, still by like 7, I think.
I've come around on Jimenez. You've been high on Jimenez. I haven't been as high on him.
I think he needs to be the starting shortstop. I think we need to find somebody to take Ahmed Rosario. I hate to say it, but I honestly want to see Jimenez play every day at short.
Yeah.
I want to see Owen Miller at second, Naylor at first, but we'll see. I mean,
yeah, initially I didn't want Ahmed to be out of the lineup. His hitting I thought was too crucial, but he's not hitting that great any longer.
207.
So you're right. I think he is expendable now at this point.
So we'll see. There's some teams that
middle infielders.
There's some teams that need a shortstop. So we'll see. Yu Chang, he's on a rehab assignment with Columbus, so he's due to return. What happens when he comes back?
Yep.
Somebody's going to have to go down, and I hate to say it, but I think it's going to be Ernie Clement. But I'd be okay with that as long as Yu Chang can hit while he's here.
I think Yu Chang will be the next guy that gets designated for assignment. I would hate to see Ernie get sent down. Maybe they can send down a pitcher, but
I think Ernie has a couple options left.
Yeah.
So that may be the reason they send him down.
It's possible,
because I think Yu Chang is out of options as well.
He is. Yep.
So,
well, a lot to digest over the next 2 weeks, which is the next time you'll hear from us. Hopefully we're talking about good things, and hopefully we don't see another losing streak like we did for the first part of our week away.
Very true. Bryan, as always, where can they find you on social media?
I'm Bryan Shaw on Facebook, at WX Shaw on Twitter. We are Guardians Land on Twitter as a team.
Facebook, we have the Guardians of the Land MLB podcast page, as well as myself. You can find me on Facebook, Mike Voorhees, or on Twitter, at Mike Voorhees. Until next time, folks, I'll leave you with a little teaser. There may be a live show coming soon.
We keep saying this.
I know,
every
teaser,
show
and I love it. But this time it's closer than it was before.
Yes,
so that's why I will tease it.
Okay. Talk to you all in 2 weeks.
Have a good night, everybody.
Part of the Press Play Podcast Network.